Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
CEO Colin Woodall answers some tough questions about NCBA's role in the beef industry. It's a must-see segment you don't want to miss. Plus, we'll break down what this fall's crop harvest means for your operation with insights from CattleFax.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Every day, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association works to protect the economic, political, and social interest of the U.S. cattle industry. And joining us now to discuss those efforts is NCBA's CEO, Colin Woodall. Colin, New World screwworm is still a prevalent issue in our industry, and I'm curious, how confident is NCBA in terms of the steps that have been taken to eradicate this pest?
Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins has done a tremendous job in committing both the resources and in making the decisions to help us be prepared to ultimately fight back and win the battle against the New World screwworm. In particular, she has designated money and facilities to be built that will provide our own domestic production facility for New World screwworm sterile flies and a dispersal facility to ensure that we can get them out into the wild. Both of those are going to be key components to our overall success. We know that sterile insect technology, which is taking these sterile flies and fooling the females into thinking they have been bred, is still the best option to win this battle. But she's also committed money to look at new technologies. And I believe that when you look at today's battle against the New World screwworm, compared to where we were in the 60s and 70s, technology has changed. And we have mapped the entire genome of the New World screwworm fly, so we know what every gene does. That's going to give us an opportunity to find some new tools, and the Secretary has the money committed to explore those as well.
That's great news. You know, really, this pest identifies or highlights, I should say, the susceptibility of our industry to disease and pests on a broad scale. I'm curious, what are the steps that NCBA is taking to kind of leverage this moment to create more preventative measures for all of us to prevent against either pests or diseases of the future?
Of course, education is key. We need to make sure that producers understand the pest and disease pressures and threats that are out there, especially from foreign animal diseases. And it's incumbent upon NCBA and the role that we play, especially with our producer education programs, to get that messaging out there, because there's a lot of very simple things that producers can do to protect themselves. Biosecurity is absolutely key for any operation. And a lot of times when producers think about biosecurity, they think about all sorts of gates, alarms, bells, and whistles. And sometimes it's just as simple as asking your guests to put booties over your boots or to know where your guests have been. So NCBA is focused on doing programs through Cattlemen's College, through our stockmanship and stewardship programs, and also through webinars to educate on very simple biosecurity steps that producers can take. So we encourage everybody to go to our website, look at our resources, and see how they apply to your operation.
So boil it down for us, Colin. What can producers do today to prepare for the arrival of the New World screwworm?
You have to have a relationship with your veterinarian. And if you don't have one, find one quickly, because veterinarians are that first line of defense in helping us beat back New World screwworm. It's also important to understand who your state animal health official agency and officer is, because you're going to need to take samples of the larvae and be able to send them in for testing, and your veterinarian will be able to help you with that. But also make sure that you are a part of your local state cattlemen's associations and NCBA, because we have a ton of resources available to help you identify what the fly looks like, what the larva looks like, and also what the life cycle of that particular fly actually is. Because one of the things that I think producers don't appreciate right now is just how much more time they're going to have to spend in among their cattle. Because that life cycle is pretty quick. It's a matter of hours from the point that the egg is laid until it hatches and the larva can find its way into the animal. So if you didn't have a problem on Tuesday, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have a problem on Wednesday. And so being out in among your cattle and looking at them very closely is also a key component that all producers need to be ready for.
Thank you so much for that insight on a very, very important threat to our industry. When we come back, we'll ask Colin some of the tough questions that people have about NCBA's role in the beef industry. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You always know where this one is. But what about this one? Or this one? Imagine knowing your machines the way you know your cattle, where they are and what they need. Data like that could make a difference. You can make better decisions for more efficiency, consistency, productivity. That's the power of technology. Get started with Operations Center today.
Welcome back. Questions about NCBA's role in the beef industry aren't new. Joining us once again to provide some answers is NCBA CEO Colin Woodall. Colin, there's a long-time comment in the industry that NCBA only represents beef packers. What do you say to people who continue to beat that drum?
There's a lot of misinformation out there, and what we find typically from people who levy those claims are that they don't even know how NCBA operates. This association was established in 1898 by cattle producers. And here we are 127 years later, and cattle producers still run this association. Yeah. It is the focus of this association. All of our leadership are cattle producers. Our committee leaders are cattle producers. The cattle producers who sit in those committees making the decisions on NCBA's behalf, on where we want to go, where we want to be, are all getting mud and manure and dust on their boots every single day. Mm-hmm. We are focused on the cattle producer, a true grassroots organization. Now, packers are members, but they are a member through our product council. And the product council are going to be companies that take our cattle, process them, and then get our product, our great beef, into the hands of the consumer. So it's not just some packers, but it's also retailers and restaurants. Mm-hmm. And they are members of NCBA because they know if we're not successful being the voice of the producer, then they don't have any cattle to process and they don't have any beef to sell. Yeah. That's why they're members. But the association is run by the producers themselves.
So tell us, is it even possible for one segment of the industry to find a way to control all the voting and the decisions made by NCBA?
There was a lot of thought that was put into the construction of our governance to ensure that every NCBA member has a voice, whether you're a cattleman in Hawaii or a cattleman in Kansas, whether you're from a big state or a little state, east of the Mississippi or west of the Mississippi, everybody has a voice in the process. I'm now in my 22nd year with this association, and I have yet to see any one segment control NCBA's policy. It's amazing what happens when you see everybody in the room talking about the concerns that they have. And I think that process, the debate, the openness, and the fact that every NCBA member ultimately gets a say on our policy before it's finalized is a testament to that grassroots process that we have. And we're very proud of being able to ensure that all of those voices are being heard. And that's what gives NCBA its strength. And I would bet, regardless of where you're at in the country, 95% of our policies are ones that most cattle producers agree on.
Let's continue with a topic that I see on social media regularly, and that is that NCBA controls the beef checkoff. What say you?
Again, education is key. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially when you see people on social media talking about what they perceive to be the process, and it is nothing compared to what actually goes on. Much like with NCBA's policy process, the CBB, the Cattlemen's Beef Board, and the checkoff process is also run by cattle producers. NCBA is the largest contractor to the Cattlemen's Beef Board, doing work on behalf of the checkoff. Things like research, our Beef It's What's for Dinner campaigns, issues management, programs like Beef Quality Assurance, BQA. But we are one of 9 organizations that contract for that money. And every September, we have to go in front of what's called the Beef Promotion Operating Committee. It's made up of 10 cattle producers representing the Cattlemen's Beef Board, which is the checkoff, and then 10 cattle producers representing the Federation of State Beef Councils, all the state beef councils coming together to work together. Those producers make the decision of who gets to contract for checkoff work and what projects we do on their behalf. And in fact, this last year, that Beef Promotion Operating Committee actually cut NCBA's request by almost 20%. So NCBA does not control the checkoff, and we don't get everything that we want out of it. But we have to work very hard to make sure we're using those dollars according to the act in the order. And one of the things that everybody needs to understand is it's illegal to use those dollars for policy advocacy. And we don't, and we have several interlocking firewalls that protect ourselves to ensure that doesn't happen, and those are audited by the Cattlemen's Beef Board and USDA.
And you have passed multiple audits over time. So
for years.
Yeah. Another question. Some people would suggest that NCBA is somehow an exclusive organization that only represents some of the cattle producers, but really doesn't represent the majority of cattle producers in the United States. What would you say to those claims?
Since I walked in the door at NCBA, one of the things that I've heard is the world belongs to those who show up. And I think that is key in this discussion, because as a national organization, in fact, the oldest and largest national organization, of those cattle producers in the country who want to be there, who want to show up, the majority of them belong to NCBA. And so those are the ones that have said, this is important for us to fight for, to help direct, and that's why they show up to engage in our grassroots process. So when you really boil it down to who is the representative of the majority of the cattle producers who want to be active, who want to be engaged, and who want to chart the course of the U.S. cattle and beef industry, it's NCBA. And all you have to do is show up to CattleCon every year to see that process work, to see the grassroots engagement, to see producers making the decisions, to understand that there's only one that's making a difference, and that's NCBA.
My advice to people who've asked me those kind of questions has been to find the answers for yourself. Don't listen to the rhetoric and that you hear on social media and all other media sources. For those people who want to get the straight answers about these questions and others, what's your recommendation?
Give us a call. Send us an email. Come to CattleCon. We are open and transparent. We don't have anything to hide. We're very comfortable in the way we have constructed this association, how the association works, and again, how that grassroots component focuses on the producer. So all you have to do is ask, and we're happy to share all of the details of how NCBA works.
Thank you so much for shedding light and maybe clarifying some very, very common misperceptions that I hear out in the industry. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Kevin.
Now, if you'd like to stay up to date on all the key issues and events facing the beef industry, one way is by becoming a member of NCBA. To join us, just call 866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. Fall harvest is nearly finished in much of the country. So what are the key takeaways for beef producers? Here to talk more about this is Mike Murphy of CattleFax. Mike, combines have been rolling all across the country. What are yields looking like as compared to expectations, and what does it mean to cattle producers?
Well, the USDA was projecting a yield of about 186.7, and it looks like, as you hear the reports coming in, that yield's gonna be a little bit shy of that. Actually, our models would suggest we're going to be closer to about a 185 yield. And two really driving factors. Number one, that eastern corn belt got a little bit drier there in the late part of the summer. And obviously that had an influence. And then the second thing is there, across all of the Midwest, we've had pockets of rust, that corn rust. And the producers had to make a decision, do we go ahead and apply fungicide to it to try to treat it or not? Those that chose not to are seeing a difference of 20 to 30, upwards of 40 bushels difference. The reason why they wouldn't have treated is because cost of production relative to the break even on that crop, you're adding cost, and are you really gonna be able to offset that with revenue? Now I think most of them wish they would have probably treated that corn, but we're still gonna have a record crop with the number of acres we had planted this year.
So let's talk global markets and what do you see impacting the value of corn and beans in terms of global trade and trade policy and exports in general?
Yeah, so we'll start on the soybean sector. Obviously, we've had a trade dispute that's been lingering for most of the year relative to the U.S. and China. For the year, China's imported about 220 million bushel of soybeans. That same period a year ago would be over 1 billion bushel. So we've had a huge impact on the trade scenario for soybeans and the lack of global business going on. On the corn side, it's a little different storyline. China's not really a big buyer. They were coming out of the phase 1 trade agreement in President Trump's first term. But since then, over the last few years, they've not been big buyers. But with our price being at the lower end of the range, we're talking about futures in that kind of $4 to $4.50 level over the course of the last 12 months. We're on pace for this crop market year that started on September 1 to be exporting basically 3 billion bushels of corn, which is by far the largest in history. So we have global demand, whether it's Japan, South Korea, Mexico, some of these other smaller countries are stepping in. So it is good news on that front. Obviously, all eyes are on whether or not the U.S. and China do get a trade deal. And if they do, I think that there'll be a definite positive impact on soybeans, which that psychology would have a lift on the corn market as well. You can't rule out that they may step in and buy some corn as well, like they did with the phase 1 trade agreement. Unfortunately, today it doesn't look like there's a quick resolution relative to the Chinese and the U.S. in terms of their disputes.
Last quick question about hay supplies. What do you see in terms of overall supplies and what prices people should expect to pay for hay and forage?
Yeah, so if you're west of the Continental Divide, they've been fighting drought all summer long, so their forage situation is tighter. As you move east of the Continental Divide, there's all sorts of feed, whether we're talking about just traditional hay feed supplies. You think about like the state of Kansas, there's a record large milo crop. So there's all sorts of hay out there and feed in general for the cow-calf sector. You know, prices, it's gonna be so regionally driven, but a lot of this cow hay I think is gonna be trading, especially east of the Continental Divide, somewhere between $75 and $125 a ton. And the nice thing is that most everybody has a lot of just feed, grass. So going into the winter, we're not gonna need as much hay to feed our cows.
Thank you again for your insights. We always really appreciate those.
Thank you, Kevin.
Now, if you're looking for top-notch beef industry research, information, and analysis, then visit the website CattleFax.com. Up next, we'll tell you about an exciting change that will allow you to take full advantage of all the educational sessions. That story when we return. Stay with us.
CattleCon 2026 heads to the heart of Nashville, February 3rd to the 5th. It's the largest cattle industry event of the year. Plus, you can check out the huge NCBA trade show. Don't miss CattleCon 2026, February 3rd to the 5th. Visit convention.ncba.org for more.
There's a big change coming to the educational portion of CattleCon 26 in Nashville. Here to tell us more is Josh White, Senior Executive Director of Producer Education and Sustainability for NCBA. Josh, you've made some interesting changes really over the last couple of years to Cattlemen's College. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been exciting to evolve a program that has a rich history, but you always want to make it fresh and respond to what attendees are telling us they want to hear and the experience they want to have. So last year we extended Cattlemen's College programming more through the entire week. Traditionally have been a little more geared toward the front end of the convention experience. So building off of that, this year we're super excited to announce that Cattlemen's College is included in registration. It used to be an additional fee. So now it's Cattlemen's College for all, and we hope folks will really look at that schedule and find time to come and learn something from some of the great speakers we have lined up throughout the week.
You bet. Producer education is such a passion for you and for NCBA. Why is it so important to this organization to offer these opportunities?
I mean, this world changes more quickly every day, right? And the value, the reason I first joined NCBA was because of the policy efforts in DC for sure. But to round out that value, we've always said producer education and the communication, component, that 1-2 punch along with our DC efforts. That's really the full value package for NCBA's policy division. And so we really enjoy doing the webinars, getting out there with stockmanship and stewardship and things like Cattlemen's College at convention. It's all about getting better every day. And you read my title, which includes sustainability. Mm-hmm. We still talk about how do we continue to improve as an industry. And a lot of these issues we deal with in DC do have an educational component to them. We can defend a lot of what we do on the range and our range management practices through our ESAP program, through our Cattlemen's College program, through stockmanship and stewardship. How are we improving our range management? We don't have to be regulated to death because we take this stuff seriously. Or BQA, you could make the same case.
So tell us this, I understand there are also opportunities for folks to get reimbursed for some of these educational activities. Tell folks how they might do that.
Right. For several years now, we've had a partnership with Cargill, our foundation, and Cargill's foundation to put on the Ranchers Resilience Grant Program. And that not only applies to our CattleCon, but other events too. So I would encourage people to go check out the Ranchers Resilience page on ncba.org. It's a great program. It is a reimbursement program, and it covers basically what it would cost for a hotel room and a registration for an attendee. And we, again, BIF, some of our states have used it, some of the breed associations. So a lot of meetings that have a big educational component to them are eligible. So yeah, check out that page. Got it available for CattleCon and some other events.
I'm reminded of Ben Franklin once said, when you empty the pockets of your coin in your mind will fill your pockets with coins. I would argue now's a great time for producers to take some of those dollars we're generating in the cattle business and put them back in our minds. And thank you for creating programs like this.
Absolutely, it's our passion.
Still to come, we'll tell you why now is a perfect time to become a member of the nation's largest and oldest association representing cattle and beef producers. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's time to vote for your favorite competitor in NCBA's National Anthem Singing Contest, sponsored by Norbrook. The winner will sing the Star-Spangled Banner at CattleCon 26 in Nashville. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to perform on the big stage at CattleCon. Voting takes place November 1st to the 15th. To see the finalists and cast your vote, go to convention.ncba.org.
One of the most important things cattlemen and women can do is join the fight to protect our industry by becoming a member of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And here to tell us more about the value and a few of the benefits of NCBA membership is Denny Ashley. Denny, what is the value of producers becoming involved in our organization?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Kevin. I think the biggest value for producers becoming a member of NCBA is that political insurance in Washington, D.C. As our viewers today know, we have a very talented, fully staffed office there in Washington, D.C. that's working really hard to make sure that cattle producers from across the country are represented really well in our nation's capital. And they've had a lot of really big wins this year that we've talked about on the show. Things like tax reform and expanded market access, improving the demand for our product, things that are going to help keep our industry profitable, our operations profitable, and one day pass those operations on to the next generation. But we couldn't have done any of that this year without all of the support from NCBA members from across the country, supporting our association and getting involved in that grassroots policy-making process.
Yeah. Now, some people tell me, gosh, Kevin, I'm already a member of my state association. Why do I have to be a member of NCBA? What do you say to those folks?
So NCBA truly is a grassroots organization, and the backbone of this association is our state partners. We have 44 state affiliates, and just like our team is working really hard in Washington, D.C. to represent us in our nation's capital, they're doing the same thing at the state capitol. And joining NCBA not only helps have us, lets us have a stronger collective voice as a national association, but it also gives your state a stronger voice in the national NCBA policy-making process.
So real quick, what are a couple of benefits people get if they become a member today?
Yeah, so if you're a new member to NCBA, we want to thank you for taking that first step to get involved with the association. And we're going to send you a free coupon for a 1-liter bottle of Sidectin Poron, thanks to our partners at Elanco. And we've also got a plethora of some diverse companies that have partnered with us for our members. So you know that when you join NCBA, you're making an investment into this industry. And we've partnered with some really great companies that want to thank you for that investment and offer you some exclusive NCBA member discounts. So the best way to view all those discounts is to visit ncba.org, or better yet, our team would love to get to talk to you. Call us 866-BEEF-USA, and we'd love to get to speak with you some more.
Thank you, Denny. A great way to support your business and your fellow cattle producers is by becoming a member of NCBA. As Denny says, it's easy to do. Just call 866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.